Hello everyone, I'm Shadashirao and welcome to Sada Learning Hub. Today's session we are going to learn JSP page directive. See here, there are the four categories of tags in the JSP. Those are scripting tags, under directives, under standard actions, and the custom tags. In the scripting tags is divided into three categories. Those are scriptlet, expression, and declaration. And coming to the directives, directives are divided into the three categories. Those are the first one is include, second one is page directive, the third one is taglib directive. Now, uh, this video I am going to cover what are the page directive. What about the page directive? This directive is used to set the important instructions to the container of the JSP. For example, we can set the packages importing the set the packages importing sessions, threading, exception handling, etc. All those things are handled by using the page directive. The syntax of the page directive is in the JSP page is, if you see, we can do the page directive in there is a syntaxes are available, HTML format and the XML format. If you see the HTML format, we can use like this, or if you use the HTML format, you can use the like this. Now see here in this syntax, if you see less than percentage at the rate page space attribute is equal to attribute and a percentage close. Now here there are the different attributes are available in the page directive. Now those are the different attributes of the available in the page directive. If you see, these are the different values are available in the page directive. The first one is import. It is used to import the Java packages into your JSP file. The second one is content type. The content type is used to set the content type of your JSP page. The next one is extends. The extends means we can extend the some other Java classes into your JSP file. In the situation, in the time, you can use the extension attribute. The next one is info attribute. Whatever you, if you want to set the information regarding about the your page, just we can use the page directive info attribute. Buffer attribute. The buffer attribute is used to buffer your data. Next, language attribute. Now we can use the JSP in the different languages, means we can use the different language. That's why we need to put which language you are using into your JSP page. The next one is EL ignored. EL ignored means whenever we are putting the false, whatever the we are putting expression language tags, those are going to be ignored. If you are putting s, whatever you are putting expression language tags, those are considered and executed into the while translation your page. The next one is thread safe. The is thread safe is used if you are putting the false, it is a, it can be your page object will be accessible by the multiple threads. If you are putting true, your page at a time it can be accessible only one thread. That is the is thread safe. The next one is autoFlush. AutoFlush, if you are putting the autoFlush is true, automatically if you are using the database statements, the data will be autoFlush into the databases. If you are putting the false, it doesn't do the autoFlush. The next one is a session attribute. The session attribute, if you are putting the false, there is no session tracking support in your JSP. If you are putting the true, by default the JSP support the session tracking whenever you are putting session is equal to true. Next, page encoding. Now, page encoding means which encoding you are using into your page. In that time, you can use the page encoding. Now, if you are using different page encodings, also possible. Next one is error page. Error page means whenever your JSP page acts as an error page, we can put error page is equal to JSP page name. The next one is error page. Now whenever you are putting the is error page is equal to that particular JSP acts as a error page. These are the different attributes are available in the page directive. Now I'm going to explain each and every attribute in depth. The first attribute is import attribute. See here, the import attribute is used to import the packages into a servlet at the translation time. We can import a packages into a JSP anywhere in the JSP page. We can import either single or multiple packages at a time. See here, the import attribute is used to it can be possible to use anywhere in your JSP. Now it is possible to import the multiple packages at a time also. For example, I am showing you percentage at the rate page. I am using the import is equal to java dot util dot date percentage close. We can use it the single one, or otherwise we can use at a time multiple. It's also possible to import the multiple packages also. And for example, I'm going to use java dot util dot time stamp. It can be possible to import the single packages in a single statement, or also it can be possible to import the multiple packages at a time. The next one is I am going to discuss session. Now the session, this attribute is used to enable or disable the session tracking in a JSP page. The default value is true. See here, the session tracking, the default value in the JSP page is false, true. It means session tracking is enabled. If we make a session is equal to false, then the session tracking in a JSP will be disabled. If a session tracking is disabled, then an implicit objects session is not allowed to use in the JSP page. See, in the JSP page, session attribute and the session implicit object both are interrelated. A session attribute is true, then the session object is accessible in the JSP page. If the session attribute is false, then the session object is not accessible in the JSP page. Session object as a method for reading a session information and also a method for writing some data into the session object. In the JSP page, we can repeat the session attribute, but it should be the same. See here, session attribute. The session attribute by default it's so true. Whenever you are using the session, it can be whenever the session attribute is true, it's possible to do the session tracking in your page. And also same time you can use the session object also. See here in the JSP page, there are the 9 implicit objects are available. In that implicit object, session is a one attribute. Whenever we are enabling the session into your JSP page, then only it can be accessible to your implicit object. Session implicit object is possible to access the session implicit object. The session implicit object is used to read the session from the JSP page, and also it possible to update the some update the session into your page. These are the session in the page. The syntax is at the rate page session. Session is equal to true or false. If it is true, we can use it. The session tracking is possible to do in our servlet. If it is false, it is not possible to do the session tracking in the servlet. If it is true, then only if it is true, then only we can it's possible to use the session object into your JSP page. If it is session tracking attribute is false, it's not possible to use the implicit session object into your page. Please go through the coming videos. I'm going to discuss about what are the different implicit objects are available into your JSP page clearly. The third one is thread safe. Is thread safe. This is the one more attribute available in the page directive. This attribute is used to inform a web container that allows the multiple threads to access a JSP page at a time simultaneously or not. The default value of this attribute is true. It means a container can allows the multiple threads at a time to access a JSP page. If we write is threadSafe is equal to false, then the container can allows only one thread at a time to access the JSP page. If we write is threadSafe is equal to false, then the container implements the internal servlet class from single thread model interface. See here is thread safe. The attribute's name itself is saying thread safe or not. By default, the page attribute is thread safe is true. If it is true, the multiple threads accessible at a time. If it is false, the multiple threads is not accessible. Only single thread at a time it accessible. See here, if it is thread safe, every JSP page is converted into the servlet. If it is this thread safe is equal to true, means is thread safe is equal to true means every JSP page is converted into the servlet. The servlet is implemented from the single thread model. Means the servlet only accessible only one thread is accessible. The syntax is percentage at the rate page is thread safe is equal to true or false. These are the two values are available. If it is true, the only one thread only accessible. If it is true, it means the container can allows the multiple threads. Sorry, I'm doing say it reverse. If it is true, means the container can allows the multiple threads at a time to access the JSP page. If it is false, the container can allows only one thread at a time to access the JSP. By default, it is true, means it can be accessible multiple threads at a time. The next one is error page. The next one is the error page. This attribute is used to inform the container the jump the control to another JSP page if an exception is occurred in a current JSP page. The another JSP page is going to handle the exception occurred in the current page. For example, your JSP is going to executing. Whenever your JSP is executing, in our JSP, some exception is raised. Whenever the exception is raised, immediately whenever you are putting is error page whenever you are putting error page is equal to whatever we are putting error page, immediately that it is redirected into the that particular different that particular page. Now I can give the syntax at the rate page error var error page is equal to b dot jsp. Now for example, I am putting this one into my JSP page. Whenever you are putting whenever you are putting this particular in a particular line into the JSP, whenever you are executing the JSP, while executing the JSP, we are getting some exception. Whenever we are getting the exception, immediately it will be redirected into the b.jsp. Now, in the b.jsp, we can handle the exception. Finally, this attribute is used to inform the container to jump the control to another JSP page if an exception or error occurred in your current JSP page. The another JSP page is going to handle the exceptions occurred into the current JSP page. The next one is error page. See here is error page. This attribute is used to inform the container that makes a JSP as an error page or not. The default value of this attribute is false. It means a JSP page is not acting as an error page by default. To make a JSP page as an error page, then we should write is error page is equal to true. In a JSP is error page attribute, an and an implicit object called exception are interrelated. If error page is equal to is error page is equal to true, then only exception object is allowed into that JSP page. If is error page is equal to false, then exception object is not allowed into that particular JSP. If you see, the syntax is page is error page is equal to true or false. See here, for example, the attribute is used to inform the container that makes a JSP is an error page. Whenever we are putting this one, whenever you are putting this page directive with this attribute, if you are putting the true, it's saying that this JSP page is acts as an error page. Means whenever you are error page, the default value of this attribute is a false. If it is false, JSP page is not acting as an error page. Why? Whenever you are putting the error is error by default it is false. Means it is not it not acts as an error page. Whenever you are putting is error page is equal to true, by default it acts as an error page. If it is is error page is equal to true, means is error page is equal to true means the implicit exception object is available. See if here, if is error page is equal to true, then only if then only it accessible to is exception then only it accessible to implicit object exception. Otherwise it's not possible to the otherwise it's not possible to access the implicit object exception. Now next I am going to discuss about content type. Next, sixth one is content type. See here, this attribute is used to set the MIME type for the response. The default value of this attribute is text/HTML. In JSP, we can set the MIME type in the two ways, using the content type attribute or otherwise using set content type method. The syntax is percentage at the rate page space content type is equal to, for example, by default it is a text/html. If you want to put anything we can put it, otherwise by default it is the text/html. We can set the content type in the two ways. If you are using the content type attribute, otherwise we can use the set content type method into your JSP page. The next one is buffer attribute, buffer. The next one is the buffer attribute. The buffer attribute, this attribute is used to increase or decrease or remove the buffer maintained by out object. See here, there are the different implicit objects are available. In those implicit object, out is one of the implicit objects. Now see here, the implicit object, we can set the buffer, we can increase the buffer or we can remove the buffer. In the JSP, out is an implicit object of a class JSP writer. It maintains a buffer to cast the output. In servlet, each line of the response is added to the response object individually, but in the JSP, each line of the response is added to a buffer, and then all the response is at a time transferred to the response object. See here, whenever we are creating whenever we are creating a response, first it will be go to the buffer object. After some time, after reaching the buffer maximum to reach the buffer, it will be moved into the response object. Transferring the data from buffer to the response object is called flushing. See here, what is the mean by flushing in the JSP? Transferring the data from buffer to response object is called flushing. From the response object, container reads the data and creates a web page, then transfer it to the server, and finally server will sends to it to the browser. For example, if you are generating the response, whenever you are generating the response, first it will be transferred to the buffer. After some, if it is reached to the maximum buffer, then it will be transferred into the particular response object. The default size of the buffer is 8 KB. By using the buffer attribute, we can increase or we can decrease or we can remove the buffer at buffering. Now I can show you how to increase or how to decrease or how to remove the buffer into your page. For example, at the rate page buffer is equal to, for example, I am giving the 12 KB. If you want to increase the buffer, we can give the whatever how much you want to give, just we can give the buffer. If you want to decrease the buffer, just give the how much you want to decrease the buffer. If you don't want to buffer, just we can give the buffer is equal to none. If you whenever you are giving the buffer is equal to none, it doesn't take any buffer. See here, buffer means whenever we are sending the response, first it will be, whenever you are creating the response, first it will be going to the buffer. After that, it will be going to the response object. Now, I am going to discuss a small question. What is the difference between print writer and JSP writer class? JSP writer maintains the buffer. Print writer doesn't maintain any buffer. See here, there is a JSP writer is there and print writer is there. JSP writer maintain the buffer, but print writer doesn't maintain the buffer. Now JSP writer is equal to print writer plus buffer. Now I'm going to next one small question. Can we make a JSP and a print writer as equal? Yes, it is possible by making buffer is equal to none. Now the JSP writer and print writer is both are equal. The next attribute is autoFlush. AutoFlush attribute. The AutoFlush attribute, the default value of the AutoFlush attribute is true. If this attribute is true, then flushing the buffer with the buffer will be taken care by the container. If this attribute is false, then the programmer has to take care about flushing the buffer. If the programmer has to not done flush properly, then buffer overflow exception will be thrown. So the recommended is to do not change this attribute. See here, auto flush is there. In the previous seventh attribute is the buffer attribute. See here, we are saying that buffer, we are putting the buffer something. Whenever we are putting the buffer something, whenever it is creating the response is send it into the buffer. After buffer is reaching to the maximum size, it will be send it into the response object. Now when the sending response buffer object to the response object is take care by the container, whenever we are setting auto flush is equal to true. If we are setting auto flush is equal to false, we need to do manually. Now I can show what is the syntax of the auto flush is page auto flesh is equal to true. By default it is true. Whenever we are putting the false, we need to handle manually to send the buffer to the response object. Response send we need to do manually, say a buffer to the response object. See here, there is a two options are available in the auto flush attribute. There is a true and false. By default it is a true. If it is a true, the container will take care to send the response buffer to the response object. If it is false, user developer need to take care to send response buffer to the response object. The next one is ninth attribute is language attribute. The language attribute, the ninth one is the language attribute. This attribute is used to specify the language used in the scripting tag. The default and the only available value is the Java. No other languages are available. The default value is Java. Percentage at the rate page is language language is equal to Java. The only one value is available, that is Java for the language attribute. No other attributes are available to set the language attributes in the JSP in the page directive language attribute. The only one is available, that is called Java. The next attribute is extends, extends. See here, this attribute is used to give an instructions to the container that extends the internal servlet class from programmer provided class. By default, a container extends the internal servlet from the base class provided by the server. If we want to inform the container to extend our class, then we use the extend attribute. See, I'm using the extend attribute syntax page extends. Extend is equal to whatever your class my JSP base. I'm extending this one. See here, I'm extending this one. To write this statement in the JSP, first we need to create a myJSP page class by extending the HTTP servlet and by implementing the HTTP JSP page interface. Now, this is the use of an extend keyword. It is used to extend the our JSP from whatever we are given class. It extend from that particular class. Finally, a JSP is nothing a servlet. This attribute is not recommended to use in the JSP. This is not used to. It is not recommended to use in the JSP. The 11th one is info attribute. This info attribute is used to write a page level readable comments in a JSP. If you want to display the page level readable comments, we can put it the info attribute into your JSP page in the page directive attribute. If this attribute is added to a JSP page, then the container adds the get servlet info to internal servlet. We can read this information by calling the get servlet info method. If you want to read the whatever you are given the info, just we can call the get servlet info method. Automatically, whatever you are giving the info into a page attribute, it will be get it by using the method get servlet info. We can use like this. The syntax is percentage at the rate page info. We can give whatever you want. Now it will be visible in the get servlet info. The next one is isELIgnored. 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 This is the isELIgnored. The default value is true. Means by default expression language is disabled in the JSP page. To enable, we write the isELIgnored is equal to false. Whenever we are putting the isIgnored is equal to false, it can be enables the expression language tags. Now we can use this one page is ignored is equal to true or false. We can use like this isELIgnored false. There are the different expression language tags are there. If you want to use, if you are using expression language tags into your JSP, we need to put must and should isELIgnored is equal to false. Then only we can we can execute the that particular is expression language tags. Otherwise it's not possible. These are the different attributes are available into the page directive. See here, these are the different attributes. The first one is import attribute. It is used to import the packages. The session one is the session attribute. It is used to do the session tracking into your particular page. The third one is the isThreadSafe attribute. It is used to it is to indicate how many is to indicate multiple threads are accessing or a single thread accessing. is error page. Whenever you are getting exception in your current page, it will be redirected into the whatever you are given page, into the error page attribute. And is error page is used to represent this particular JSP page is acting as an error page. If it is true, it is acting an error page. If it is false, it is not acting an error page. By default, it is a false. The next one is content type. Content type means we can represent response is which content you are displaying into the browser. The next one is buffer. Buffer means we can send the response object. Sorry, buffer means we can set the buffer into a particular JSP page. Next, autoFlush. AutoFlush means if you are putting the autoFlush true, the container itself handles the sending the response to buffer to the flush. If it are auto flush is equal to false, we need to developer need to manage to sending the response from buffer to the response object. The next one is language attribute. The only one value is available for the language attribute, that is the Java. The next one is extends keyword. Means the extend keyword, the attribute is used to extends extend your JSP phase, whatever you're given in the extend class, it is extended from that particular class. The next one is info attribute. The info attribute is used to put the page level comments, whatever you are putting the page level comments, that is available in the servlet, that particular JSP servlet class, in a get servlet info method. The next one is isELIgnored. isELIgnored means by default the value of the isELIgnored is true. Means it ignores the expression language tags. If you want to expression language tags also, we need to put it isELIgnored is equal to false. Then only it's possible to access the it possible to execute the uh, expression language tags also. These are the different attributes are available in the JSP directive page directive tag. Now I'm going to explain a small program. See here, I'm writing a small program here. In this small program, this is small program. I'm writing only one program for this. I am handling the 2 3 only. In this program, I using, see here, I am doing the page attribute. This is the page directive. In this page directive, I am using the session attribute. The session attribute, I am using enabling the session. Now whenever you are enabling the session, then only it can be possible to access the implicit session object. Otherwise it's not possible to access the implicit session object. See here I am using the page directive with the attribute import attribute. In this import attribute, I am importing the java.util.package. See here, this is the page attribute. I am using the page directive import attribute. Here I am using the page directive. This is the session attribute. This is an XML syntax. This is here I am using the XML syntax. Here I am using the JSP HTML syntax. There is a two syntaxes we can use it. This is an HTML syntax we can use like this. This is an XML syntax we can use like this. Anything it will be work in your JSP page. If there is no problem to use the HTML page, HTML syntax, or maybe a XML syntax. Two will be work into your JSP page. Now here I'm using page directory with the import attribute. Here I'm using page directory with the session attribute. I can run and I can show how the output is. Run as run on server. Next, finish. Okay. Now I'm going to start my server. Yes, server is going to start. Yes, it is starting now. It is started. Now I'm giving it here page directive page directive session demo.jsp. Capital page DIRECTIVE session 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 capital DEMO.jsp. Why it is not showing something? It is the problem is there. Now refresh it. Now I can redeploy once again. Run as I'm going to the server. Where is the server explorer? This is the server explorer. Whatever the applications I'm removing from here. Now I'm running once again from here. Run as run on server. Next finish. Okay. Now I'm going to restart my server. The server is going to about to restart. Server is restarted. See here, I'm giving page DIRECTIVE directive SESSION session DEMO demo.jsp. I'm giving this one. See here, in the page directive demo session, I'm printing the current date is I'm printing the date. After that, I'm printing the session id. Whatever the session is there, I'm printing that session id. After that, here I'm putting the session. Is this session is new or not? See here, in this the current date is Wednesday May 31st 2000 something date. This is the session id by default. Why? Because session id is available. I'm putting with the page attribute, page directive session attribute is equal to true. That's why I'm able to using the session implicit object. By using the session implicit object, I'm displaying the session id. After that, session state is new or old. If this is session state is a new state. Why? Because just now the session is created. This is the way to use the page directives into your JSP page. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much watching this video. Hope this lesson helpful to you. Keep watching our lessons. Keep writing to us. Do not forget subscribe our channel SADA Learning Hub because we have many sessions that would help you to develop our skills, and I will be back soon. Till then, you take care. Bye bye.